This presentation is about a major new initiative to finance climate action on a global scale by a large coalition of organizations. Before I outline this new initiative, I will outline why this funding is so urgently needed through a sequence of specially selected short videos. The first video is called the Production Gap 2020 Special Report by the Stockholm Environment Institute, which illustrates the urgent need for large-scale climate action now. This next short video illustrates the impact of climate change on human security and is then followed by a segment about climate solutions that can be implemented on a global scale. When people think about climate change, they usually think about the impact on our environment and endangered species. But what they don't think about nearly as much is its impact on human security. What if I told you that more than 1 billion people may be forced to migrate by 2050, causing mass population displacement? Or that by 2040, roughly 5.4 billion people, more than half the world's projected population, are expected to live in areas where the demand for water exceeds the available amount. These issues lead to the breakdown of societies, with increased conflict and political and economic instability. How can all this be possible? Climate change is a threat multiplier. It aggravates other stressors which together can threaten a nation's stability. Many national security, intelligence, and military experts are becoming increasingly alarmed about this issue. Motivated by projections of dire consequences, they are coming together from all across the globe. They represent organizations including the International Military Council on Climate and Security, composed of senior military and security experts from over 30 different countries, and the National Security, Military, and Intelligence Panel on Climate Change in the U.S. Additionally, many civil society organizations, such as the global nonprofit think tank, the Institute for Economics and Peace, have also become concerned about this problem. To sound the alarm, these organizations have recently completed major reports about these issues of human security that will be experienced worldwide. These experts all indicate that big things are happening and big things need to be done to mitigate the impacts of climate change on human security. So where do we go from here? Fortunately, solutions already exist that, if implemented on a global scale, could launch us into a sustainable future for all. There are a wide range of solutions available now, many of which can be grouped into 3 main categories: decarbonization of industry, energy storage, and carbon sequestration. Luckily, there's been massive progress in technology relating to these fields. Many technologies and nature-based solutions are available now and can be implemented on a global scale. Here are some examples. Green hydrogen-related technologies can dramatically reduce carbon emissions in transportation, manufacturing, and shipping industry since hydrogen does not create any carbon emissions when utilized. For example, now you can purchase long-haul transport and local delivery trucks that are powered on hydrogen. As well, there is now a steel production plant powered by hydrogen. Energy storage technology has been rapidly developing, with the cost of battery storage plummeting in recent years. Based on data published by Bloomberg NEF, the cost of battery storage technology has dropped by 76% since 2012, making the combination of renewables and energy storage more financially viable. This storage can enable a massive increase in renewable power generation, which would eliminate the need for many fossil fuel power plants. This energy storage comes in many forms, including pumped hydro, compressed gas, electrochemical batteries, and thermal storage. As we transition into a low-carbon economy, we can draw down our existing emissions through carbon sequestration, through the use of technologies and practices to accelerate natural solutions. Examples of this are rapid tree planting with the use of aerial drones, regenerative agricultural practices, and wetland restoration. A 2020 report by the World Institute shows that regenerative farming and grazing systems, if achieved globally, would draw down more than 100% of current annual CO2 emissions. Other options include artificial direct air capture, which removes carbon dioxide directly out of the ambient air, and carbon capture storage, which removes carbon dioxide out of the gases emitted from industrial processes. The need for climate change mitigation is urgent. The technology and nature-based solutions are ready, and they need to be implemented immediately, simultaneously, and on a global scale. We need large-scale action for this large-scale problem, and the sooner we start, the smaller the impact on present and future generations. That's why we need to implement these solutions on an adequate global scale and without delay, and many trillions of dollars. The UNDP estimates that 85 to 90% of financing for adequate climate action needs to come from the private sector to meet the Paris Accord. Steve Waygood from Aviva Investors, which manages over $465 billion in assets, indicated that the financial markets are currently incentivized to undermine the Paris Agreement, hence a big change is needed. As shown in the short video segment, Waygood indicates that the London Stock Exchange's embedded warming potential is estimated to be 3.8 degrees Celsius rise by 2100, and outlines why this is an incredibly serious problem.
But possibly the scariest figure I learned when we were doing our TCFD reports, and we're now on our fifth, we're working on our fifth, was when we discovered that the London Stock Exchange embedded global warming potential was 3.8 degrees. It's not David's fault. It's the companies that are listed on the exchange. If you were to use all the proven and probable reserves and the other forms of energy that are listed there, then we will head much more rapidly towards 4 degrees than the 1.5 degree scenario of the Paris Agreement. There are any number of reasons why we should care about that. The world's coral reefs will effectively have all bleached. The world's lungs, the rainforests will be collapsing. We will see about 75% of the world's population no longer able to live where they do today without air conditioning. So that huge amount of migration is actually where we're heading business as usual. That's why we've seen now over 2,000 pieces of policy and regulation around the world. Some countries have more than 30 to try and internalize the externality, as it's called. So this pace of change, not just these policies and regulation, but also litigation. I learned recently that there's been over 1,500 separate legal cases now in the last few years on climate change. Whatever you do, if you're non-executive directors, make sure your business is not exposed to that litigation risk. Make sure you are doing something about this problem. Make sure you are governing it and that you've got a clear articulation should the lawyers come. And they really may. I mean, as an insurance business, our directors and officers' liability insurance and the extent to which it underwrites this kind of risk is an issue for us. So if it's an issue for us and you have D&O, you need to think about that too. So that's the pace of change and where it's coming from. Huge policy shift, phenomenal agreement within the Paris Agreement. However, it doesn't yet set out a vision, a plan, and a process for finance. That I'm expecting to see at COP26. And under Mark Carney's continuing leadership on this agenda, he's advising the UN, he's advising the UK, and there are any number of, I think, phenomenal ideas currently emerging that we could make happen at COP26. More about that perhaps under Q&A. So that's about the pace of change.
This next video by Aviva illustrates some of the problems with how the markets are incentivized, which is leading to pension money being invested in businesses that are negatively impacting our collective future instead of improving it.
When you pay into your pension, how much do you really know about what happens next? Let's pretend for a moment you could follow your money on its journey and see what happens. It may seem complicated, but essentially fund managers choose how to invest your money. In order to make it grow, they often buy shares of large companies traded on stock exchanges around the world, and these companies play a major role in shaping the world we live in. Globally, hundreds of trillions of pounds are traded and monitored every minute of every day. And the performance of funds is available for everyone to see at any time. This sounds like a good thing, but it can actually lead to short-term decision-making. Let's look at why. Imagine the pressure you would face from being constantly monitored. Fund managers need to show the investments they make are growing in the short term. Also, stock exchanges and investment banks make more money the more shares are bought and sold. As a result, companies are also pressured to act in the short term to show immediate returns. To make things worse, if CEOs report their company's performance too frequently, the bigger picture gets ignored. Long-term benefits, such as investing in innovation, workforce skills, or the efficient use of natural resources, slide down the priority list, as do the societal and environmental impacts of things like carbon emissions and air pollution. In the long term, this can actually lead to weaker companies and lower profits. Because in reality, it's good companies that treat their customers, employees, the local community and the environment well that will make sustainable investments. Think back to the beginning. You invested in a pension product for your future, but it's actually likely to be invested over shorter and shorter timescales. Your goal was to create a better future for yourself and your family, but the result could well be a future you'd never have chosen. No one designed this system. It's evolved over time and under the assumption we have unlimited natural resources. But we don't.
Up next is a short video that introduces the major new initiative by a large coalition of organizations that was mentioned earlier in this presentation. Fortunately, there's a significant new initiative underway being carried out by a large coalition of organizations, including some of the world's leading financial institutions, such as Aviva investors. This coalition is proposing a new mechanism, the International Platform for Climate Finance, IPCF, which could be launched at COP26 to help deliver the trillions required for the Paris Agreement. To do this requires commitments from global private finance institutions to align their business models to the Paris Agreement and ask the companies they finance to do the same. This coalition wants this to be done through an agreement, the Glasgow Private Finance Accord. This would act as an umbrella for the whole financial services sector, bring together those already acting on climate and pushing those not implementing Paris to step up. This coalition is advocating support for countries to raise the capital needed for mitigation, adaptation, and transformation of their economies. These capital-raising plans, combined with commitments from private finance institutions, would mobilize investment capital to help put the world on a path to a net-zero transition. This coalition, the Coalition for the International Platform for Climate Finance, wants to ensure markets support the Paris Agreement rather than undermine it. For the IPCF to be established and push effective funding of global climate solutions, a substantial number of countries and their financial institutions need to agree on ambitious finance action for COP26. Therefore, we encourage everyone to learn about this important initiative and consider supporting the GPFA along with the IPCF's creation for COP26. The clock is ticking and the ball is in our court. The time to act is now. For more information on climate solutions, as well as how we can support this initiative, visit climatesan.org/CSSF. A key feature of the Glasgow Private Finance Accord, or GPFA, is that it would ask participating financial institutions, FIs, to collectively demonstrate their commitment to aligning their business models to the Paris Accord, and ask those companies they finance to do the same. By signing the GPFA, financial institutions, or FIs, would commit to the following. Aligning their business model to the aim of the Paris Agreement, which essentially means that they would do what they can to help restrict climate change to below 1.5 degrees of warming. Using their influence with other FIs, companies, and governments to urge alignment to the Paris Agreement, including signing the accord where appropriate. Publishing a transition plan, which is also known as Institutionally Determined Commitment, or IDC, that sets out how they will implement the 2 points outlined above, including their short and medium-term objectives and credible trajectory. Analyzing and annually disclosing key information, including the impact of climate-related risks on their business based on the TCFD approach, along with their process against their IDC and any increase in ambition. And finally, the FI would commit to updating and increasing ambition for their IDC every 3 years. As mentioned earlier, the GPFA will establish the IPCF, which will be required to do the following. Host annual meetings of signatories at future COPs where it will publish an annual status report. Administer the signatories to the Accord and maintain the IDC reporting guidance. Monitor the commitments and act as a central online repository of the IDCs. Where IDCs are considered exceptional, the IPCF will issue an award. Where FIs neglect to publish their IDC, the IPCF will eject them. And maintain an online register highlighting which FIs have not yet signed in order to facilitate and focus investor engagement. For the GPFA and IPCF to make a substantial impact and incentivize the markets to support the Paris Agreement, we expect an agreement on global carbon emissions trading, which is part of Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, is needed. Therefore, we recommend that the global advocacy effort to support the adoption of the GPFA by the parties at COP26 should also include creating awareness for the urgent need for an agreement on international carbon emission trading. We at ClimateSAN invite you to consider the following actions. Learn more about the GPFA along with the associated IPCF and how it can create many benefits for the world, including facilitating funding for a wide range of climate actions. And if you find value in the GPFA and the associated IPCF and would like to support these initiatives, we invite you to consider how these initiatives can be further enhanced and provide your feedback to the Coalition for the IPCF. Create more awareness about the GPFA and its associated IPCF. This could include helping to host a webinar about these topics with Aviva investors and ClimateSAN. Help broaden support for the GPFA by reaching out to conservative-minded people about the need for the GPFA in these two key areas: impacts of climate change on human security and impacts of climate change on their savings and investments in the financial markets. If you want some background about these impacts, see Our Planet Too Big to Fail. Additionally, the Coalition for IPCF plans to invite the parties at COP26 to consider adopting the GPFA. Therefore, they welcome your feedback and any efforts to help them build support for these initiatives. Since we feel that international carbon emissions trading is also a very important way to incentivize the markets to support the Paris Agreement, we also invite you to create more awareness of the need for an agreement on this type of trading by the parties at COP26. Thank you for taking the time to view this video and consider these important issues. If you're interested in more information, please visit climatesan.org/FCA.